50,000 people climbed aboard 6 ships and flew towards the edge of the galaxy. None of them ever came back. The Republic called it an accident, but it was nothing of the kind. The expedition was called Outbound Flight, launched in 27 BBY, the most ambitious deep space mission the Old Republic ever attempted. 6 Dreadnought-class heavy cruisers locked around a central storage core, carrying 6 Jedi Masters, 12 Jedi Knights, and 50,000 passengers, with Jedi Master Joruus C'baoth driving the project and steadily seizing control of it. They crossed into a stretch of space the Republic had no charts for, and the Republic told itself that was the problem. Better maps, better hyperdrives, better luck next time. 50 years passed before the Chiss found the wreckage. The Republic was wrong about the reason. Outbound Flight didn't vanish because the lanes were uncharted, it vanished because the lanes don't stay in one place, and only a Force-sensitive pilot can read where they're going next. The Chiss had known that for centuries. The Rakata had known it for 25,000 years. The Republic never learned it at all. Palpatine did, and a fleet built on that single piece of knowledge would, decades later, nearly end the New Republic from a world the galaxy didn't believe was there. This is the rule the galaxy keeps forgetting. Only one man ever weaponized it. The Chiss found the wreckage in 22 ABY, recorded in Survivor's Quest, in a star cluster they call the Redoubt. Roughly 2 centuries earlier, another ship had been torn apart in almost the same way. The vessel was the Legacy Run, an Outer Rim freighter operating during the High Republic era. Light of the Jedi opens with its destruction in hyperspace, the freighter tearing itself apart as it tries to swerve around a smaller craft that had appeared in its lane out of nowhere. The breakup blew the Legacy Run into thousands of pieces, and the pieces did not stop. They scattered across the Outer Rim through random hyperspace reemergences the Jedi later called the Emergences. Jedi Master Avar Kriss, coordinating the response from her bridge, sensed the Force at Hetzel fracture into fear and confusion. The cause traced back to a single Nihil ship that had dropped onto the freighter's route by using a hyperdrive no Republic navigator had ever seen. Decades after Outbound Flight, a pod of semi-sentient creatures called Purrgil pulled an Imperial Star Destroyer out of known space entirely. In 1 BBY, in the final episode of Star Wars Rebels, Ezra Bridger of the Spectres called a pod of them down. 3 Purrgil Ultra, the largest of the species, wrapped their tentacles around Grand Admiral Thrawn's flagship, the Chimaera, and when the pod jumped, the Star Destroyer went with them. Imperial Command listed Thrawn and Ezra as lost. 9 years later in Ahsoka Tano and Sabine Wren followed the Chimaera's path along what the Jedi Archives call the pathway to Peridia. The ancient droid Huyang described the route as one of the intergalactic hyperspace lanes that used to follow the migration paths of the Purrgil. The lane led to a world outside the main galaxy. Long before the Republic charted the Outer Rim, a catastrophe ripped through the western edge of the galaxy. Chiss legend, preserved in Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rising, recorded what happened. A series of chain supernovas threw huge masses at near light speed between the stars, demolishing asteroids and devastating entire planets across the region. Whatever hyperspace lanes had existed before were torn apart, and the wreckage was still drifting through the region thousands of years later. The Chiss, the blue-skinned species native to that stretch of space, gave the resulting tangle of debris and shifting space a name. They called it the Chaos. Everywhere outside it, in the Chiss tongue, was lesser space. The Chaos was dense with supernovae, gravity wells, rogue magnetospheres, black holes, and a labyrinth of solar storms. And none of that was the worst part. The constant drift of debris reshaped the lanes faster than any navigation computer could replot them, making permanent trade routes impossible. That left ordinary crews with only one option. Long journeys had to be made jump by jump, spanning only a few systems at a time, with the ship dropping out of hyperspace between each leg to check its position. What took a few days for a Chiss vessel could take an outsider weeks, if the outsider survived at all. The Republic's hyperdrives were built for a stable galaxy, with charts updated over generations of predictable astrogation, and the Chaos had none of that. The Legends sources went further, into territory canon has never confirmed. In Legends, a layer of anomalies fenced the entire region off from the rest of the galaxy. Researchers called it the Western Barrier, or sometimes the Tangle. The Essential Atlas records how Dr. Innsmouth Bowen, a historian with the O'Brien Institute, compared the barrier to a spinning top, countless whorls and eddies moving too fast to safely navigate. One Legends theory said the wall was not natural at all. something had built it to keep something else in. Those same sources laid out 3 competing explanations. One proposed that a mass of dark matter had drifted into this stretch of the galaxy, creating gravitational anomalies that confuse hyperspace navigation. Another held that overlapping hyperspace ripples from the galaxies nearby created a permanent turbulence zone at the western rim. A third pointed elsewhere. In that version, the Celestials, the godlike beings credited with the earliest construction projects in the galaxy, had built the western barrier themselves to contain something on the other side. What everyone agreed on in both continuities was that a hyperdrive could not read the chaos. Anyone who survived inside it was reading something else. 25,000 years before the Republic existed, the first hyperdrive ever built had needed a force sensitive at the helm. In legends, traced in the new essential chronology, the ancient Rakatan Infinite Empire ruled the galaxy from the dawn of hyperspace travel. Its force drive required a force-sensitive pilot on board, and would only take a ship to a world with a strong force presence. It set the rule every later civilization in the chaos would have to rediscover for itself. In the Chiss Ascendancy, the captain rarely flew the ship. The pilot was a girl, somewhere between 7 and 14 years old, sitting in a small chamber near the cockpit with a caregiver at her side. Chaos Rising called these children Uzili Esahembo, a word in their language Chun that translated literally as Skywalker. The term has no in-universe connection to the Skywalker family. The resemblance is a coincidence of translation. Their job was to read the chaos the way no instrument could. Not the lane as it was, but the lane as it was about to become. The technique was a force ability called Third Sight, a form of precognition. A trained navigator could read the next safe movement and feed the heading to the helm before the ship arrived. A journey that took weeks for an outsider could take a Skywalker only a few days. The Ascendancy treated those children as the most closely guarded asset it had. Every Skywalker traveled with a caregiver assigned for her well-being and instruction. By her early teens, the third sight was usually gone, and she rejoined the broader Chiss population. A rarer ability called Second Sight, a form of telepathy, sometimes remained. Their existence was a state secret, and the few outsiders who learned of them were rarely allowed to leave. The Chiss were not the only ones who had figured it out. Across the unknown regions, an entire industry had grown up around the same trick. The Navigators Guild was a loose association of force-sensitive pilots from a smaller species across the region. Subgroups included Vector 1, the Pathfinders, and the Void Guides. Guild members called the Force the Great Presence, a neutral name that kept them clear of Jedi and Sith politics alike. A Guild Navigator could be hired by any government in the chaos with the credits to pay. Without one, a fleet was reduced to short jumps and a prayer. There was a second kind of pilot in the chaos that did the same thing without intending to. The Purgil metabolized a gas called Cluzon-36 in their bodies and used it to make natural hyperspace jumps. Their migrations ran along ancient routes that wove through the chaos, and in some cases, between galaxies entirely. Those migrations inspired the earliest hyperdrive vessels open to the public. One of the first models, the MPO 1400 Purgil-class starcruiser, was designed by the engineers Shug Drabor and built by the Corellian Engineering Corporation. The same creatures Imperial pilots later fired on as a nuisance were the reason hyperdrive tourism existed. The technique even reached the Empire. In Thrawn Alliances, Darth Vader learned to navigate the chaos after Grand Admiral Thrawn explained the method. The Sith Lord, whose mastery of the Force was already considerable, applied it to hyperspace and crossed into the unknown regions himself. The dark side practitioners had a less elegant version of the same idea. In canon, the Sith Wayfinder was a small force-attuned pyramid that worked like a compass, guiding a single ship through hostile space the way a Skywalker did, but only to one destination, Exegol. By the era of the Resistance, only 2 Wayfinders were known to exist. The Rakata built it into a machine. The Chiss raised children to do it. The Gil sold it. The Purgil did it without meaning to, and Vader learned to do it on purpose. Each one read the same impossible thing, and each one found a new way to own it. Everything that lived inside the chaos had to solve the same problem the Republic refused to. The ones who solved it well became hunters. The ones who solved it badly became prey. The first thing to pull Outbound Flight out of hyperspace was not an accident. The hunter was already in position. Mithra Nuruodo, The Chiss officer the galaxy would later know as Thrawn, who had recently captured a piece of technology from a species called the Vagari. The Vagari couldn't read the lanes themselves and had decided to drag everyone else down to their level. Their answer was a gravity well projector, a device powerful enough to mimic a planet's mass and pull any ship in range out of hyperspace. They called their version a shipnet, and they had been using it to ambush traitors for years. Their flagship habit was to seal living prisoners in transparent zero-gravity pods bolted to the outside of their warships, used as protection against incoming fire. Anyone trying to attack a Vagari vessel had to choose between letting it through or harming the captives strapped to its hull. The young Chiss commander turned the projector on the Republic vessel. The 6 dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace into a coordinated strike. The Vagari were the crude version. Another power in the region went straight for the source. The Grisk hegemony was an empire native to the unknown regions that the Chiss had been quietly fighting for years. The Grisks deployed cloaked gravity well technology, harder to see coming than anything the Vagari had used. But pulling ships out of hyperspace was useless if you couldn't run your own fleet through the chaos. So the Grisks went looking for the only things in the galaxy that could navigate it for them. They abducted the same Skywalkers the Chiss guarded as stale secrets and turned them into captive navigators. The Grisks didn't only hunt ships, they hunted the children who could read the lanes, because the children were the lanes. 2 centuries before the Clone Wars, another faction skipped the gravity wells entirely and built a hyperdrive that did the reading itself. The Nihil were a violent raider movement led by Marchion Ro. Their advantage was the path engine, a hyperdrive that flew routes no Republic navigator could chart, and no Republic scientists believed were real. The paths were calculated by Mari San Tekka, a Force-sensitive hyperspace prospector. The Ro family had kept her alive in a medical pod for more than a century, harvesting her readings to chart routes nobody else could fly. In 232 BBY, Ro deliberately sent a Nihil stormship onto a path that intersected the Legacy run in hyperspace. After Mari San Tekka was gone, the path engines became unreliable, sometimes hurling Nihil ships into collisions of their own. Where the Ascendancy raised Skywalkers as state-protected assets, the Nihil simply chained one to a machine and harvested her for 100 years. A few years later, the Nihil stopped picking off single ships and walled off an entire region of space. The Storm Wall was the most ambitious Nihil weapon ever built. Its origins, told in the Eye of Darkness, trace back to Chancey Yarrow, a former Academy of Coretta student whose hyperspace research the Republic had shelved as too dangerous. The Nihil hadn't shelved it. Yarrow joined them and finished the work. The Storm Wall was a vast web that disrupted hyperspace travel across 10 sectors of the Outer Rim, a region the Nihil sealed off as their own occlusion zone. Any vessel that attempted to cross it was wrenched out of hyperspace, destroyed immediately, or made to vanish without a trace. No signal could pass through. Crossing at sublight would take a century. Hundreds of worlds, including Republic systems like Irem and Arano, were sealed inside. The Republic spent years trying to break it, and for a long time nothing worked. The Storm Wall drew its power from Marchion Ro's own flagship, the Gaze Electric, and only collapsed for good once that ship was destroyed. The Path Engine had let the Nihil read the chaos. The Storm Wall let them build their own version of it, where their navigators could fly, and nobody else could. The Nihil had stopped being raiders in the unknown regions. They had started exporting it. One of them had been negotiating with the Emperor. In the Truce at Bakura, the Siruk, a reptilian species from the Siruk star cluster, ran their technology on entekment, a process that extracted living energy from a sentient being and used it to power machines. The Emperor secretly contacted them through the Force and offered Outer Rim colonies in exchange for entekment technology. The deal never closed, but the contact was the tell. Palpatine had been picking allies whose strength was the same as his own, control of who got to navigate and who got to vanish. By the time of the Resistance, a stretch of canon space outside Exegol had become its own predator. The hidden world sat inside a system reachable through only one safe corridor, a treacherous passage through the galactic barrier nicknamed the Red Honeycomb Zone, or the Ship Eater, or the Blood Net. In the Darth Vader comic, Sly Moore and Admiral Korlek sent hundreds of TIE fighters and pursuing Star Destroyers into the zone after Vader. An unidentified creature waited inside. Most of those ships never came back out. Every hunter so far had worked alone. One had been quietly turning the entire region into a weapon for 60 years. and the empire he ran had been hiding behind the map the whole time. 5 years after the Battle of Yavin, an Imperial probe droid drifted into a stretch of the unknown regions on a heading nobody else could fly. Its signal traveled for a while, then it cut out. By the time of Aftermath Empire's End, droids like it had been disappearing into the region for decades, sent out under a program nobody in the broader Empire was supposed to know about. Most of them never reported back, and the ones that did were not lost at all. They were scouting ahead for something. The reason for the program sat on a desolate planet called Jakku. The Jakku Observatory, hidden beneath the dunes, contained a three-dimensional star chart of the unknown regions built on information from Admiral Thrawn. The Imperial Survey Corps, named in Moving Target, had spent years charting the edges of wild space, but the routes into the deeper dark were treated as a state secret only the Emperor's office could read. Palpatine sent probe droids to push past where the charts ended and explore the computations the observatory produced. The Empire had not been ignoring the unknown regions, it had been working them. What the Emperor had been building in the unknown regions was never a contingency, it was always the destination. Exegol, the hidden dark side world deep in the chaos, sat inside a box system reachable through only one corridor, the Red Honeycomb Zone. The only safe way through was a Sith wayfinder, guiding a ship along a route no navigation computer could read. Palpatine had built the box and the keys that opened it. Inside that box, an army had been waiting since the Empire fell. The Sith Eternal, a clandestine order Palpatine had cultivated for decades, had inherited shipyards dating back to ancient darkside conflicts and modernized them into an automated fleet builder. Out of those yards came the Final Order, a fleet of Zyston-class star destroyers, each one armed with a world-ending axial cannon. The fleet sat below the surface of Exegol for years, invisible to the galaxy above it. The Final Order had one problem. The Wayfinders could carry single ships. They could not lift a fleet of this size. To launch, the Sith Eternal had to broadcast a navigation signal from a tower on the planet's surface, locking every ship in the formation to a shared safe route. Once the tower fell and Pride's flagship followed, the signal cut out and the formation was stranded. The First Order itself had been built the same way. The flight into the dark is the through line of the Aftermath novels and Bloodline. After the Empire's defeat at the Battle of Jakku in 5 ABY, what remained of the Imperial military slipped into the unknown regions and spent 30 years rebuilding there. By the time the galaxy noticed, the First Order already had a fleet. Palpatine had invented none of it. Long before he ever sat on an Imperial throne, he had been an apprentice to a Sith Lord named Darth Plagueis the Wise, who taught him that real Sith power was patience, the cultivation of plans across decades and centuries. The Sith Order itself traced back through a 1,000-year lineage to Darth Bane, who would set the rule of two in motion specifically so the dark side could survive in hiding and inherit the galaxy generations later. Exegol had been waiting on Palpatine because Palpatine had inherited a plan older than the Empire. The Republic had told itself Outbound Flight was an accident, the lanes uncharted, the loss unrepeatable. The truth was older. Every civilization that ever tried to live inside the unknown regions arrived at the same answer independently, and only one man remembered when it mattered. A fleet built on that single piece of knowledge nearly ended the New Republic from a world the galaxy didn't believe was there. But the knowledge was never about reading where the lanes were, it was about reading where they were gonna be. The next safe moment, the world the Force was pulling toward, the route that didn't exist yet. The chaos never rewarded the biggest fleet or the fastest ship, it rewarded whoever could see what came next. And that was never really navigation. It was the thing the Sith had been practicing in the dark for 1,000 years. Patience, foresight, a plan laid across centuries no one else could read. The unknown regions didn't fall to the man with the most power. They fell to the one who could see furthest ahead. But what he built out there has a story of its own, and so does the admiral he sent ahead of him. The shipyards on Exegol, the 1,000 star destroyers, the secret army the Resistance only barely stopped, and the blue-skinned admiral who almost broke the New Republic on his way back. Both have full stories on the channel.